Here's how to build the ultimate PS5. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. Black Friday is here and there are so many great deals on great accessories for your brand new PS5. I'm going to run through all of the ones that I think are worth picking up. First up, let's start out with SSDs. This is the first thing I think everyone should buy for their PlayStation 5, mainly because games are getting bigger and you only have 680 gigabytes of usable storage on any PS5 right out of the box. The biggest requirement outside of speeds with these SSDs is that you need to have a heatsink on it, because when you're transferring back and forth from that SSD, it's going to get very hot. You can use one without a heatsink, like the PS5 won't tell you that you're using one without a heatsink. So make sure you use the links in the description, because I will only link SSDs with heatsinks. Now, my list of SSDs you should look at has been slowly whittled down over time, and right now there is one SSD that you should buy, and it should be the only one you buy, and that is the Samsung 980 Pro. The 990 Pro is right around the corner, which drove the price of the 2TB 980 Pro down, but it is still falling, and at the time of filming, you can get it for $190, which is over $100 cheaper than it was when it came out. And the only thing you're losing by not getting the 990 Pro is a little bit of speed. So honestly, I think it's worth picking this up versus the 990 Pro. Now, the interesting thing is Samsung is going to be releasing a 4TB SSD next year, and there aren't really a lot of 4TB drives out there to buy right now, but the ones that are available are between $500 and $600. So I would expect to pay that much for the 4TB 990 Pro, if not a little bit more. But the interesting thing here is, like, what if you bought 5 of these drives, right? Like, they're like $500 or $600, so obviously that'd be pretty cost prohibitive, but you could get those adapters that allow you to put the SSD in the USB-A ports. There are 3 of them on the PS5. Then you need a 4th adapter that allows you to use the USB-C port, and then you've got the internal slot that you can install the SSD in. And at that point, you'd have a 20TB PS5. Now, yeah, it would be like $3,000 and you'd only be able to install PS5 games on one of those drives, since you need to have it installed in the SSD slot. But if you're one of those people who never wants to run out of storage, that could be an incredibly good option for you. I mean, who am I kidding? No one's really going to do that. But if you really wanted to get crazy with storage, you do have 4 USB ports accessible on the PS5. But if you really want to actually make the thing usable, you would really only want to use the 2 on the back and then the USB-C port on the front for storage, and then the other USB port you would have to leave for charging the controller. That would be a really cool way to make the ultimate storage-based PS5. And another benefit of leaving the front USB port open to be your charging USB port is that that one's actually the slowest on the console. It's slower than the 2 on the back, which are 10 gigabit speed, and so is the USB-C port on the front. So you're really only limited by the actual port and not the SSD. So if you're storing all your PS4 games on those external drives, you would basically have all of your internal storage on the SSD you installed yourself and the 680 gigabytes that you have usable out of the box, just ready to go for any PS5 game you want. Now, there's obviously more practical ways to do this, but I need a cool thumbnail, and the idea of a PS5 with 4 SSDs hanging off of it like Doc Ock arms, it was too cool not to come up with to include in this video. Anyway, there are other SSDs out there like the Firecuda 530. Obviously, I'll have everything I've ever talked about linked down in the description. I just don't think you're going to be able to beat $190 with any of the competition. And at that point, that's like the buy it now type of price. Like, get that while you can. Next up, let's talk about headsets, because there's 3 options here that I think are good to go with. The first one is the Sony Pulse Wireless 3D headset. Look, this is like the main flagship headset of the PS5 because it was the flagship headset of the PS4, and before that, it was the flagship headset of the PS3. Obviously, they changed the way it looks each generation, but it's changed only slightly so that it still looks like it deserves that Pulse Wireless 3D headset branding. Now, when the PS5 came out alongside this headset, the headset wasn't that great. It just had really muffled sound, and even though you were getting the 3D surround sound with it that the PS5 has, you needed to change the EQ on the headset to make it sound good. Thankfully, Sony included audio settings in a future PS5 update, so it's actually simpler than ever to mess with the EQ and get these things sounding right. Their full price is only $100, and I've seen them drop as low as even $50 if you get them used, but if you don't want something that was on someone's ears on your head as well, you can can get them on sale for around $60 or $70. You might just have to look a little harder for that. The cool thing about this generation's Pulse 3D wireless headset though is that you finally have multiple colorways. So you've got the original white color obviously to match your launch unit PS5. You also have the midnight black option available, and the newest one is the gray camo. At announcement, didn't think it was that cool. It's got a black band and then the cups are camo, but now on second look you can see that there are very tiny PS buttons hidden within the camo on the headset, which honestly makes it worth picking up to me. So either way, you've got three options. You've got the white, the midnight black, and the gray camo. The second headset that I think you should look at is the InZone H7 because it's kind of like the big brother of the Sony Pulse Wireless 3D. This is made by a different division at Sony. I've actually messed around with this headset. It sounds incredible, and it comes along with a USB dongle, which is great because you can connect directly to your PlayStation 5 or your PC, and you'll get zero latency on the sound, whereas if you use Bluetooth, which this headset also has, you'll get latency in game. So Bluetooth, not the best option for games, but the cool thing you can do is use both at the same time. So you could put that USB dongle in your PS5 and then connect the headset to your phone, and then you could play music from your phone that'll be pumped into the headset over the game audio, and you can actually change the mix, which I just think is a really cool feature that every new headset should have. Another thing I like about it, other than the fact that they're super comfortable, is the fact that you can flip down the mic to turn it on and flip it up to mute it. My one gripe is I wish the mic was detachable, because at that point they'd be a cheaper pair of 1000X Mark IVs. I mean, they look so similar already. It's just the mic that really throws them off. So like with most Razer headphones where you can detach the mic, they instantly become a nice pair of over-ear headphones. So these things MSRP at around $240, which in my opinion was a little overpriced, but recently they've dropped as low as $148 and they settled around $150. I think they're totally worth it at that price. And even if you compare them to the Pulse Wireless 3D, which are $100, you're getting more than $50 of value in terms of sound quality and just features alone on this InZone H7 headset, that in my opinion, it's kind of like a no-brainer to pick it up at that price. There is an H9 version of the headset, and that one's even more expensive, but really all you're getting with that is better noise canceling. And like, I don't need noise canceling for a gaming headset, so I would still say the H7 is the sweet spot. You are getting a little bit more premium materials too with the H9, but at $150, man, you cannot beat that price. Like if you have the option, right? You're at the store and you're like, I could get the Pulse Wireless 3D and God of War Ragnarok. I would say still pay the $150 for the H7 and wait for your next paycheck to pick up God of War, because that headset sounds so much better even after you tune the Pulse Wireless 3D. And my third choice is a budget option that honestly doesn't feel budget. It's the Razer Barracuda X. Now they do have a much more expensive version, which is like $250, so don't be fooled into buying that one, because this one, which is $50, has some really great features and some great sound, but it'll work with pretty much any device you throw it at. They're really cool over-the-ear headphones with like decent sound quality, and the mic is detachable unlike the InZone headset. So if you're on a budget, I would recommend picking these up for around $50. My bonus recommendation is the Razer Black Shark V2, because that's the headset I use every day. It's just a dongle headset. You don't get Bluetooth with this, but it does have a detachable mic, and they do look like really cool over-the-ear headphones. Now their MSRP is $180, which is a little expensive, right? When you're considering you can get the H7, which sound admittedly a lot better, for $150, but they're on sale right now for $100, and I've used them the most. So I feel like I should give them as a quick recommendation, especially if you're into Razer and that whole matte black look. Next up, let's talk about controllers, because now that we're 2 years into the PS5's life cycle, you have a lot of options. Now you can, at the cheapest, get a DualSense that's white for $45 refurbished, but I know a lot of people aren't really into refurbished controllers, especially with stuff like stick drift. So yeah, you're going to be paying around $50 for a brand new DualSense. Here are all the options you have for DualSense colors. You've got midnight black, you've got cosmic red, you've got the white, you've got blue, you've got pink, you've got purple, you've got gray camo, and you have the God of War Ragnarok Special Edition. I've got the God of War Edition right here, and this is the one I'm going to shill for because I am absolutely loving the game, and I actually think this is a great colorway for the controller. I like that the buttons, like the triggers and the R1 and L1, are black, as well as the face buttons, because as you'll notice, on the white controller, you get white face buttons, but then on this colored version, you get this cool sort of dark gray / black that looks like the black ice that you see throughout the game. You know those doors that Kratos has to use the chisel on, they have a really cool texture. I want to touch them. He goes like think, and then they like blow up into dust. That's kind of like the texture on this button here on the controller. You also get this image of two wolves who obviously represent Kratos and Atreus, which I think is pretty cool. And then on the back, you've got the logo for God of War Ragnarok, just in case someone calls you on it and says, that's some game with wolves in it. And the most interesting thing about the God of War Ragnarok controller is that it's the only DualSense you can buy at this moment that has a white PlayStation button on it. Yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? Like they've got so many different colors ranging from like gray camo all the way down to hot pink. And the only one that lets you get a white PlayStation button is this God of War Ragnarok controller. And the best thing is the markup is not that bad on it for being a special edition controller because it's the same price as all the other special color editions at $75. So if you do see this one out in public, I think you should buy this controller, especially if you like God of War. And if you don't like God of War, I think you should buy the gray camo controller because of that cool texture that I talked about earlier that has the really teeny PlayStation buttons hidden in there as well. Third choice, definitely Midnight Black. Anything else, you're crazy. Maybe Cosmic Red, I don't know, I like that one. Regardless, I've got all of them linked down in the description and I can see how many are bought of each controller. So I'll get back to you guys later after Black Friday and let you know which one was sold the most. If you're like me and you don't like that stock white look on the PlayStation 5, that two-tone white and black look, and you just want to go all Midnight Black, Sony's got you covered with new faceplates for the console. You can get pretty much every other color I just mentioned, whether it's gray camo, it's blue, it's pink, it's purple, it's red, it's black, it's not God of War edition because they don't make that. Regardless, you have just as many options minus one with faceplates as you have with the DualSense controller. This is the only one where I don't think the gray camo really works all that well. It's just too much texture on the side of the console. I would definitely say go with Cosmic Red if you aren't going to go with Midnight Black. I wish they had an orange option though, because having the middle be black and then the sides be orange, that's like Halloween colors. So Sony, I hope you're working on that. The next two accessories are ones you're not really going to find any deals on because they're not out yet, but they're two things you should keep your eye on if you just got a PlayStation 5. The first one of those being the PlayStation VR 2. Now this comes out early next year in February and it's going to be $550. And for that price, you are getting one of the best VR headsets on the market. You've got OLED screens going in front of your eyes. It's super high resolution. They've got the best feature from the Oculus Quest 2, which is inside out tracking. It's a single cable solution. So you get a long USB-C cable, you plug it into the front of your PS5 and plug it directly into the headset. You're good to go. They've got a new pair of controllers for it, which are basically a DualSense cut in half. They're called the Sense controllers. They look like they're basically a 50-50 mix between the Oculus Touch controllers and the Valve Knuckles, and I'm super excited to get my hands on those. My biggest gripe, obviously, is that the launch lineup seems a little weak right now. Like, we're getting a new Horizon game, which looks really cool, and Sony does have a lot of first-party studios that only work on VR games, which is nice to see. And then my other big gripe is that you have to use this thing with the PS5. It doesn't have a standalone option where you can play games saved to the headset at lower resolutions like on the Quest 2, and you don't have an option to use this thing with PC, which honestly, I think is crazy, right? Like, I would not be surprised if Valve figures out some way to connect this thing to Steam and use it as a Steam VR headset, because these controllers, this headset, the quality that you're getting here, it's something I would really like to use on PC because it looks like it stacks up pretty well to that Valve Index at around half the price. You can go and register to pre-order it right now on the PlayStation Direct store, and then it'll ship around February 22nd next year. So that's pretty soon, actually. I'm excited to get my hands on this, specifically for that new Dark Pictures game and the new Horizon game, Call of the Mountain. And the next accessory you're going to want to pay attention to, and honestly go pre-order right now if you want it, is the DualSense Edge. This thing comes out January 26th and it looks awesome. The coolest feature I think about this controller is that the actual stick modules, like the little module itself, is replaceable and they're only going to cost $20. Now you can change the stick height, you can change the stick cap and all that, all the stuff you can do on the Elite Series 2, you can do on this controller, but being able to take out the entire module effectively eliminates stick drift once and for all. I would hope that if this thing got stick drift within the first year, Sony would replace that module for free, but if in the meantime you just wanted to play with the controller and not wait for an RMA or like a warranty shipping or anything like that, you could just go to the store and buy a $20 module, swap it in, and you're good to go. You also get a carrying case, the back panels are removable. Honestly, this controller looks super premium and it better be for the price of $200, but that's not far off from what you're still paying for the Elite Series 2, which has major quality problems, and they've only really updated it with the new white version, and that is still very expensive at around $180. So yeah, paying $200 for the DualSense Edge, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. And the last thing you're going to want to keep your eye out for on Black Friday is, of course, a PlayStation Plus subscription. Obviously, this year's a little bit different because we have 3 tiers. We've got Essential, we've got Extra, and we've got Premium. I would look out for deals on Extra, right? So a year subscription of PS Plus Extra costs around $100 right now. I'm hoping that for Black Friday, you could probably see it around $60, which would be great because then you'd be getting all the perks of Extra for an entire year for the same cost of a full year of PS Plus Essential. The library on Extra is honestly really good. You're getting PS5 native games like Deathloop, Returnal, Demon Souls, Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is like 4 great games for the console that it could take you hundreds of hours to complete. So right there, it's worth it. But you've also got stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. I mean, there are thousands of games on there and they're all mostly really good. They're not doing any filler with that Extra library or holding off games for the Premium library. What I wouldn't pay for is Premium. They're doing a terrible job getting all of those classic games on there in a timely fashion, and also streaming just not really worth it for me personally. But if you do plan on streaming games, that's the only situation at which I would look for PS Plus Premium. If Extra is dropping down to 60, I would expect Premium to drop down to 80, which if you really want that streaming, you want that collection of classic games, I think that would be a fair price for it. But yeah, that's my Black Friday list for 2022. That's pretty much every accessory you need to make the ultimate PS5. If you do end up grabbing 4 SSDs and installing them on your PS5, I would absolutely love to see the Doc Ock monstrosity that you create, and make sure you have your DualSense plugged into the other USB port charging off the front.